This episode is brought to you by Farmers Insurance.
The headlines on RT International. Only one day to go until Turkey's runoff presidential election on Sunday, as the two leading candidates from the first round battle for the top spot. Over 100 people die in 2 weeks of spiraling violence between communities in central Nigeria. And the EU agrees to review its newly imposed tariffs on carbon good imports after New Delhi's complaint. That comes as even Germany's European People's Party rejects the bloc's green initiatives. Elon Musk's neurotechnology company Neuralink plans to conduct its first ever human clinical trials amid concerns over the ethics of such operations. It's just
25 years, Consumer Cellular's goal has been to provide wireless service that helps people communicate and connect. We offer a variety of no-contract plans, and our U.S.-based customer service team can help find one that fits you. To learn more, visit consumercellular.tv.
Some things just make you feel more alive than others. Like the rush of adrenaline from an SUV that roars from 0 to 60 in 3.8 seconds. Jaguar delivers that thrill every day. The F-Pace, how Jaguar makes an SUV.
Will Turkey ratify Sweden's NATO membership? Stockholm says it can't fulfill all Ankara's demands. As the bloc's membership requires unanimous approval, what would make Turkey change its mind? And what does all of this mean for NATO's future? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Mohammed Jamjoom. One of the many fallouts of Russia's invasion of Ukraine has been that previously neutral Nordic countries.
That's volume at 14. Let's get some volume.
Alright, so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice low, obviously you're sitting up super high. You also have these very rectangular little windows. The windshield's tiny, and you have a very good view because you're sitting up so high and stuff, but it's just, if you're used to any of the old Hummers, you'll feel right at home in this with the way that it feels with the view out. Now, it still has excellent visibility, and also it helps it feel a little more airy whenever you have these transparent roof panels. That makes it a lot more airy, and also like the B pillars, A pillars are all pretty thin as well. Other things to notice here, so if you're very quiet, you'll notice it does make these little, fake sounds to make it feel a little more futuristic and stuff. Unfortunately, they're too quiet. I actually like the way they sound, but they're very, very quiet. I wish you could amp them up or, make them a little built in. And you can't have super quick steering in something like this, just for rollover reasons. So, I get that they had to keep it, more relaxed and that. Let's turn down onto this back right here and see how it does. Here we go. All right. It still picks up nicely. Wow, it's interesting. So, unlike some other electric vehicles, as you get to higher speeds, it starts to pull harder and harder. It's very interesting with the way that's set up. So anyway, yeah, wow. And whenever you put your foot down, it really lifts up the nose so much because of how soft the suspension is here. And again, with that building acceleration G, it really gets more and more exciting the longer you put your foot into it, which is the polar opposite of most other EVs. And it's a welcome change, so it's a lot of fun. So anyway, whenever you don't have that Watts of Freedom mode going, you're going to have 830 horsepower, but it's the full 1,000 horsepower in that mode. You also have 1,200 pound-feet of torque, and in that Watts of Freedom mode, you'll get a 3-second 0 to 60 time. But Car and Driver did test a 5 to 60 rolling acceleration, and in that setting, you're going to be doing about a 4.9 seconds 0 to 60, which is most likely kind of like what I experienced there. You know, it wasn't a mind-blowing 3 seconds 0 to 60 run, and under 5 seconds is still a, you know, impressive quick time, especially for something as enormous as this is, that's really not focused on acceleration at all, honestly. So it's impressive, but, you know, if you're just rolling around with your buddies and you floor it, you know, it might not elicit the same kind of crazy reactions you get out of, you know, someone whenever you're driving a Tesla Plaid or, you know, any other wide variety of EVs that have that instant punch and, you know, a huge amount of pull even without that mode. This is definitely still going to be funny that it's going as fast as it is, but it's, you know, not quite as mind-blowing as you might be expecting when you see that spec sheet. You also hear, you actually do hear the electric motors whirring a little bit. It's kind of funny just how much of that you hear. Also on this rougher road, honestly, not too much road noise at lower speeds here. You do hear some rattling and creaking though from these removable roof panels. So that's one thing to keep in mind. But anyway, we're coming from corners here, and let's see how this 9,000-pound EV handles. All right, so it actually handles decently for what it is. Now, the only reason why is because this thing has 4-wheel steering. And with that 4-wheel steering, you can turn those rear wheels up to 10 degrees, and so that really, really helps with the handling of this thing. And because of that, it has a turning circle that's equivalent to like the average compact SUV, and it's pretty wild, and it makes it much easier to park one of these things as long as you can find a space that's big enough for it. But at least maneuvering it is, you know, pretty easy, so that's good. And so handling is actually, you know, quite good for something that's on 35-inch mud tires, that's 9,000 pounds, that's as high up as this thing is, that is not set up for any kind of backroads carving whatsoever. It handles pretty well. Now, you know, it is a little disorienting at first whenever you're using the 4-wheel steer. You can turn it off, by the way, too, if you want. If you want to just have a more traditional feel, you can turn it off. I've gotten used to it pretty quickly. Like the first few miles, I was like, whoa, this feels kind of weird, because it almost feels like it's like the back end is like artificially like stepping out on you just because you're like turning the wheels. But as you get used to it, it really feels natural, and it just makes this a lot more friendly to just drive around, because, you know, that really masks the mass of this thing. So I actually love the 4-wheel steer. I think it's great, and makes life a lot easier when you're driving one of these things. I'm not much of an off-roader, so I'm also not going to go into the off-roading stuff as much as some of the other channels out there that focus on that are much better at discussing all the off-road stuff than I am. But what I can say is, you know, the overview highlight stuff is it has locking diffs front and rear. The rear is a virtually locking diff, but has 11.9 inches of ground clearance in the terrain mode. In the extract mode, you'll have 15.9 inches of ground clearance. And so, I mean, obviously this air suspension this thing has, you can raise it or lower it for whatever your needs are. And along with that, you also have a bunch of different modes that'll help, you know, walk you through whatever kind of terrain you're facing. There's a terrain mode, but there's also a tow and haul mode to help you with that. And I love the animation that shows it towing a Saturn V rocket. It's so, so cool. But, you know, you also do have like the mud modes and all that kind of stuff to help you with rougher terrain. And so you also have the crab walk feature that has been highly advertised, so that, you know, allows you to kind of do a little bit of a sidestep there with the 4-wheel steer. A very cool touch if you are in the very, you know, rare situation where something like that would come in handy. It is nice to have. I think honestly it's just a really cool party trick, like a lot of the things in this vehicle. How many people are actually going to use a lot of these features, I don't know, but it's a cool party trick. This thing also, in other party trick news, has a ton of different cameras. You know, all the usual cameras for like a 360 view, forward, rear cameras, you know, overhead, view of the bed, you know, view of the hitch, all those types of things it can do. But it also does have underbody cameras, and so the underbody cameras, you know, enable you to see what's going on underneath the front and underneath the back. So if you're trying to clear things, you know, you can have that. You also do have, you know, skid plates and all that to help you be protected whenever you're driving off-road as well. But do another acceleration, you're stopping on it. It's funny though, I almost have to like adjust the steering whenever I'm driving this thing, even just to keep it going straight. It's so funny how loose the steering is, but it's definitely just, you know, keeps you on your toes a little bit. It makes this more of an adventure. You're more involved in the driving experience because you're sawing back and forth with the wheel here all the time. And, you know, it's the same kind of fun, you know, you'd see from a Wrangler as far as, you know, the handling and steering and stuff goes. But one thing to keep in mind, though, is that weight. So, you know, 9,000 pound curb weight, give or take a couple hundred pounds, again, depending on how it's configured, is really, you know, a kind of weight that you have to be mindful of. You know, even if it, you know, drives great, handles great and all that, you just have to be aware of the physics of that kind of, you know, weight. And like, you know, we'll do a little bit of a quicker stop here. You know, it slows itself down, but, you know, it's not going to be super fast just because it can't be. You know, I think these things brake about as quickly as any kind of 2500 series truck, or maybe even a little bit, you know, longer than that. So, I mean, long braking distances, you just have to be mindful to just make sure you're planning out your, you know, movements a little bit more, I guess you could say. And so, you know, that's just one thing of these. It's, you know, it's almost so heavy that it's a little bit sketchy at times. That, you know, if you're on some kind of slippery terrain, for example, where weight is a disadvantage, things like that, you know, you're going to have to keep that in mind, especially when you're off-road on trails and things like that. And it does, of course, have hill descent control and all those types of things as well. And so you also do have regen here. So if you want, there's this cool little paddle on the steering wheel, and that allows you to do some more intense regen here. And it's almost like an on-demand one-pedal mode, where, you know, you can pull that just temporarily for whatever stop. And I kind of like that. I think it's a really cool idea. It looks a little unsymmetrical, you know, with the steering wheel design here to have only one paddle, so to speak. But it's really cool because, you know, there are certain times where I don't need, you know, tons of regen. I don't really need a one-pedal mode. I'm fine driving like a normal vehicle most of the time, but it is nice to have that if you are trying to do a little bit of extra regen for whatever reason. You can pull on that, and it gives you that, you know, right away. And so, as far as other electric components are concerned, so it has a 212.7 kilowatt hour battery, and it'll do, like I said, 329 miles of range. And also, it does 350 kilowatt fast charging, which is awesome as well. And I can say that whenever this vehicle was dropped off to me, I immediately had to go and charge it. And whenever I hooked it up to a 350 charger, an EVgo charger, it was able to pull. I was at like 16% battery whenever I got there. It was able to pull 310 kilowatts down, you know, like immediately. And was holding that, you know, pretty well as far as the sustained charge rate until I got up to some higher percentages there, where it slowly would start to, you know, drop off and level off. And EVgo is great with how they kind of chart out, you know, your charge rates and all that stuff. But it's a pretty quick charging thing, even though it's a massive battery. And so, for example, in my experience, I sat at the charger for about 42 minutes, and I went from 16% battery to almost 80% there. And obviously, you know, that's a long time to be sitting. You know, 42 minutes. But obviously, you don't have to, you know, go that long, and, you know, a lot of that fastest charging was done in those lower percentages. So if you're okay working with, you know, the lower ranges of the battery, you can really, you know, maximize that charge rate a lot more, and, you know, probably cut down on that time without, you know, affecting the battery charge too much. And so anyway, you know, I'm just pretty impressed. I mean, that's very fast charging, and, you know, it's right towards the top of the pack out there as far as EVs here at the end of 2022. I mean, you know, like my Mach-E that I have at home currently, I mean, that does like 150 kilowatt charging in perfect conditions. So I mean, this is really nice and fast, and obviously it goes through the battery a lot faster. But 329 miles of range is a good amount of range, and again, also towards the top of the pack, you know, as far as most, you know, mainstream EVs go these days. The only thing that isn't great from an EV standpoint, though, is the efficiency of this thing. And I will be driving this vehicle for an entire week, so I'll come back and give you my final efficiency later. But what I can say right now is that over the 20 miles I've driven so far, I've been getting 1.5 miles per kilowatt hour, which is bad. You know, like for, again, reference, my Mach-E that I have does at least 3 miles per kilowatt hour, so double the efficiency of this thing. Obviously, you know, that is much lighter, much more aerodynamic, much smaller, much less powerful. So, you know, this is like you would see with any, you know, gas-powered vehicle, where something with a ton of power and weight is going to get worse fuel economy, and I get, you know, 10 miles per gallon in a Ram TRX versus 20 miles per gallon in, you know, Mustang GT or something. But it's just, the fact is, it's just, you know, it's not very efficient. So, you know, it's an electric vehicle, but I mean, the way that it burns their electricity is really not economical by any means. But, you know, just part of the price you're paying for, again, all the crazy awesome stuff this thing has. And so now we're up at some slightly higher speeds here, doing about 45 miles per hour, and even on this brand new perfectly paved road, you know, you're starting to hear some road noise for sure. That's the nature of 35-inch tires, though. So, you know, again, this goes back to, yes, the thing was expensive, but don't expect it to be luxurious. It's, again, focused on wowing you with its off-road performance, wowing you with the straight line performance and all these other various things. But you know, don't think that this is some luxurious thing, because it isn't. At least not yet. Maybe they will do more luxurious versions down the road. But as of right now, this Edition 1 is, you know, very focused on just being an intense off-roader, and so you just have to, you know, be prepared and mindful of that. Alright, so now I'm out on the highway here in the Hummer EV, and I'm going hands-free because I have the Super Cruise enabled and it's functioning here, and so we're just cruising here hands-free. I love Super Cruise. It's hands down the best hands-free system out there these days. It is just so good. It's so confidence-inspiring, and it's the most advanced as well, because it actually does intelligent lane changes, so it'll do an automatic lane change with no need to do any kind of turn signal or anything like that from the driver. It'll put on the turn signal automatically, but it does those passes automatically for you if it sees that there's a chance. And I got to test this out a good bit already in the Escalade V that I recently reviewed, and it's testing it out here again in this. It's just the same great, you know, accuracy with just being perfectly in the middle of the lanes. It's also intelligent where if it sees a vehicle in, you know, the left side or on the right side or wherever, you know, it always tries to, you know, stay away from traffic a little bit, so it's intelligent about, you know, being in the right part of the lane, you know, so that you're not feeling uncomfortable hugging, you know, the middle of the lane or the left side of the lane whenever there's a massive 18-wheeler next to you, you know, and so I love the way that it positions you, and I also like that, you know, I mean, even though the steering isn't super precise here in the Hummer, and, you know, this thing is, you know, just a little more loose, it still does a great job of just being very precise and accurate with its steering. Now, the other thing you'll notice here, though, is, you know, out on the highway, 60 miles an hour here, not high highway speeds, honestly, 60 is pretty low. There's still a lot of road noise in here, so I'm raising my voice just to talk here on camera, and you know, it's just a vehicle that, you know, if you're on the highway for long periods of time, it probably won't be the most comfortable. If you're, you know, again, planning to spend 6 figures on something and you want to have Super Cruise and have a really nice highway driving experience, I'd certainly go for an Escalade. But again, this is not what this is about. Just, again, drives in the fact this is not a luxurious vehicle, but it's great to have the Super Cruise here to give you a nice, you know, bit of relaxation whenever you're out on the highway here, just having your hands resting on your lap, just watching the road ahead. It does a really good job, and even we're entering construction zone here, very tight with the guardrail and stuff, so I'm going to kind of hover my hands a little bit. And I love the Super Cruise also lets you make adjustments on your own without disengaging the system. But again, thanks to GMC here, I'll have the Hummer EV for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place, and I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world efficiency numbers, as well as my thoughts on the pricing, how it compares to its competition, and the other things you can get out there, and anything else that I noticed during my week of driving here. And here we go. Wow, wheel spin. Woo! Wow. So that definitely feels like a 3 seconds 0 to 60 time. Woo! That was fun. Wow. Woo, yeah, it's fun to, you know, try that out to get the true potential of this thing, because that's a rush. That is a rush. Wow, it's not the fastest accelerating vehicle I've ever tested. That probably, still that crown goes to the Tesla Model S, not the Plaid, but the P100D. Sorry, my brain's a little scrambled after that. But, oh man, that was fun. Whew. Yeah, 3 seconds definitely sounds accurate, and doing it in something this enormous is a blast. And I also love how the suspension really, I mean, that front nose lifts up, because again, you're doing this launch in something with the kind of, you know, softer setup this has, and again, getting the wheel spin out of something as well. 4 wheels spinning whenever you have these, you know, 35-inch tires. It's hilarious. Ooh, sorry, it actually took my breath away. Wow. Yeah, that is impressive. That is definitely takes, you know, one of the top spots in the Matt Moran ranking of crazy accelerations that I've ever done. Alright, so I've been driving the Hummer EV here for a week now, and it's been an absolute blast to drive this thing. It is so quick and just, you know, so just gutsy in so many different ways that it just you feel really awesome driving it, is the bottom line here. Obviously, you're up super high, that adds to that feeling. And, I am honestly just impressed that it is such a friendly thing to live with, because usually something this massive, is just a pain to drive around, a lot of the times. And obviously the width here, is something you have to be mindful of. And there was a few instances where I was on either a tighter road and close quarters where I'm, kind of sweating the width a little bit. But aside from that, it's very easy to drive. The four-wheel steer is my favorite thing, I think, about this vehicle, honestly, because it is an absolute lifesaver in parking lots. It makes it so much easier to maneuver. It makes this thing just feel a lot less intimidating to drive than it honestly should feel. It should feel more intimidating and harder and more difficult than it is. And the fact that they made this so accessible, so easy to drive, and that it has as good of road manners as it does, honestly, I think is the most impressive thing about this. Obviously, there are still some compromises here, due to the, loud tires that are enormous. But the ride is so comfortable with this air suspension, and I got used to the loose steering pretty quickly as well, so that honestly didn't bother me, as, a day or two went by. It was something I was already used to and, had no complaints with. So the last two things I mentioned here about the Hummer EV are its efficiency numbers, or lack thereof, and also the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first off, those efficiency numbers. So these are rated at 51 mpge in the city, 43 on the highway, and 47 combined. And if you look at any other EV, they all do much better efficiency numbers. I mean, just for reference, again, like the Mach-E that we have at my house, those are, in the 80s, I believe, for the MPGe ratings, which is kind of an irrelevant number in some ways. It doesn't really have any, bearing on actual fuel efficiency or anything like that. But just as far as my driving here now, 164.5 miles of driving I've done. My mileage rating is 1.6 miles per kilowatt hour, which again is about half the efficiency of my Mach-E on a bad day. So, again, goes with having 1,000 horsepower, having, it hauling around, 9,000 pounds, and terrible aerodynamics of this thing, having the same, aerodynamics as a condominium, it's just not going to be good from an efficiency standpoint. No one expects that, so I'm not going to get into this. But, it's just worth noting that, it's not very efficient, and so therefore not very green with its use of electricity, even though, again, it is electric. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's, economical or anything like that. That also means, you have to make sure that you definitely either have a lot of fast chargers around you, because it is such a huge battery to fill. So you got to make sure you have either really the top-notch, like 350 kilowatt fast chargers to fully utilize fast charging, or make sure that you have a garage or a driveway that are plenty large enough to plug this thing in at your house. And like my average size garage, for example, couldn't fit this, so I was stuck going to fast chargers every time I needed to charge. And then the last thing to mention here is the pricing and how it compares to its competition. So first, pricing. This one assessed is $110,295 to be exact. And at 110, it's insane, in every single way. And so I think the price being very high also makes sense. It's just, you have to make sure you have the right expectations. You have to make sure that you are understanding that you're paying for the off-road performance, you're paying for the fact that it has 1,000 horsepower, and it's kind of like that performance car thing, where you're paying for the performance, you're not paying for necessarily the rest of the vehicle. It doesn't feel like a $110,000 vehicle here inside, not even close in my opinion. Again, I think most people buying these, they don't really care that much, and it's nice enough to not, upset anybody, but it's just, if you're someone who, wants something luxurious, obviously you're better off getting an Escalade or something for the same price than a fully loaded Escalade at that, for 110. But if you can afford to spend about $40,000 or so more, I would recommend the Escalade V. That gives you, tons of performance of a supercharged giant V8 engine. It's definitely different in its vibe than this, being futuristic with the electric thing and all that, but also very impressive performer, and you have way more comfort, way more luxury, much better
decision making, and they know that they will have to wait for five more years if they miss this chance. On the government side, people.
Now that's volume at 14. Let's get some volume.
so setting off here in the 2023 Integra. So the first thing you notice about this, well, you have a really nice slow cruising on a slow park road, is that you still have the very same high seating position here like any other MDX, and actually with the Type S you can have it even higher up than a regular MDX if you want, because there's a lift mode here in addition to snow modes and all the other drive modes. But the lift mode, actually you also can go down into the Sport Plus mode, and that will drop it 0.6 inches lower than the normal ride height here. And so it's great you have that adjustability, but I mean, no matter what, visibility is still really good here in the MDXs. You'd have a hood that drops down pretty nicely, pretty thin A-pillars, you're sitting up high enough that you don't really have that get in your way too much, although you still do have the mirrors on the doors, which I don't love, but it works okay. View out of the back is great, of course, in typical SUV fashion as well. Other things here though that I noticed, so you have a pretty nice, soft, comfortable ride. So they really focused on the Type S, kind of blending both comfort and sportiness, so this isn't like an all-out hard-edged performance version. And they actually say that they also say the steering has been retuned, so it is unique, by the way, compared to a regular MDX. So that's one thing you'll notice. That, of course, can also be changed here with the individual mode. Let's turn down onto this back road here and see how it does. Here we go. All right, nice and responsive. Wow, this thing, it gets up and moves really, really nicely. And it sounds pretty good too. That Sport Plus mode gives you like a 2 decibel louder sound even over the Sport mode, and that pipes in a little bit more sound in the interior and also for the exhaust. It does have an active exhaust. That opens up more. Seeing that boost gauge fling upward whenever you're looking at the gauge cluster here is really cool. So anyway, the MDX Type S here runs the 3-liter turbocharged V6 engine, does 355 horsepower, 354 pound-feet of torque, and it's a strong amount of power. It's like 65 more horsepower than a regular MDX, and like 87 more pound-feet of torque, which, by the way, comes on about 1,400 RPM is when you get that full torque. Also, in Sport Plus mode, it raises your idle to 1,000 RPM, so it means that it's a little bit more responsive, a little bit more ready to go the second you stomp on it. Sport mode also is a little bit of a higher idle, but it's not quite as high as that Sport Plus mode. But anyway, so it gives you about a 5.5 second 0 to 60 time is what Car and Driver got, and it'll go up to 111 mile per hour top speed, which is actually a tiny bit slower than a regular MDX. That's also a little on the low end for a sport SUV as far as top speeds go. Not like anyone's really maxing out a top speed anymore, but just one little thing to note there is that it doesn't have a whole lot in the top end, but it should be plenty of power for anyone who's doing normal legal speeds. And feels nice and punchy. So it runs through this 10-speed automatic transmission, which has been beefed up, of course, for the Type S. And they say it has 40% faster downshifts, 30% faster upshifts than a regular 10-speed from Acura. And so, great you have all those improvements. I'm going to try out some manual shifts here, and we will see how it responds. So it automatically upshifted me to second when I wanted to stay in first. It won't even let me go into first gear at 16 miles per hour. Anyway, second gear. I love how the nose lifts up. Even in Sport Plus mode here, with everything supposed to be in its stiffest setup, still, gives you a little bit of that drama, which I really like. And it really, the way that it gains speed is very smooth and very stealthy almost, where you don't realize how fast you're going until you look down and you're like, wow, this thing is really moving. I know 5.5 seconds isn't a crazy 0 to 60 time these days, but, it feels pretty good and impressive, honestly. But we're coming up some corners here that I always take, and let's see how the MDX Type S handles them. So we're on 275 wide Continental cross-contact regular all-season tires. So this is not going to be as dynamic as the TLX Type S on its sportier tires, and that vehicle, like I said in my review, had mind-blowing handling. This, obviously, predictably is not going to be as good. These weigh 4,712 pounds. I mean, it's huge. It's, very massive vehicle. But it has a lot of things helping it out. So in addition to that air suspension, the adaptive suspension, you also do have the super handling all-wheel drive, which has a true torque vectoring rear diff, and it can overdrive that inside rear wheel, and it allows you to have 70% of the torque going to the rear in the optimum conditions, and you can send 100% of that 70% to either one of those wheels. So it really, you know, gives you an impressive torque vectoring sensation. But yeah, these tires, that's where you find the limits. The tires just give up before the you know, all-wheel drive system even has a chance to shine, unfortunately. So I think if you actually do want to do some serious sporting driving in this thing, I would heavily suggest you getting some better tires on it. These tires are really cool though. They're self-sealing tires, which is even better than a run flat. They say you have a better ride quality and better handling than a run flat, but it actually will seal itself up, so hopefully at least minor punctures will be a thing of the past as far as, you know, worrying about having a flat tire. But anyway, try out some more acceleration here, accelerating up a hill. I mean, it still handles fantastically well. Yeah, there's still a little more float. I kind of want it to be stiffer. I wish that there was a, you know, I assume Sport Plus mode is as stiff as this thing will go, but, you know, considering how Honda and Acura have such impressive damper tuning with like the Civic Type R going razor sharp stiff, I wish there was a mode for this to really take it to an extreme level so that you could have, you know, rock hard, you know, suspension setup. I mean, that would be great to really give this a little more body control than what it has currently. I mean, it handles very, very well. For a huge 3-row SUV to be doing what I'm doing is very impressive. I'm not trying to downplay it whatsoever, but, you know, I think it's really, the tires would certainly help if I, you know, had some sportier tires on here, but I still feel like there's a little bit of, you know, wobbliness in the suspension too that I wish, you know, just was a little more aggressive. Still handles itself very, very well, but if you're someone who wants the best handling Type S possible, obviously you can go for the NSX. But aside from that, the TLX definitely is the more impressive handler. I also really love that the TLX had really quick steering, and so I mean that vehicle just blew my mind with its handling in that thing. This doesn't have that same quick steering, probably because you're sitting up way higher, and you got to worry about, you know, not pitching this thing too much, considering it's an SUV. But you know, it's good handling for sure. It's just, you know, you have the limitations of the weight and just the size of this thing that's going to hold you back. So, you know, I think with the Type S thing, you know, I think that they tried to be a little milder with this Type S compared to the TLX, and that's fair. And it's an SUV, it's kind of a different buyer. But just if you're going into this expecting, you know, something super sporty, it's sporty, but I don't think it's mind-blowing or anything. And I mean, it's certainly better than like a GV80, for example, which is one of the main competitors. You know, the twin turbo V6 GV80s. Those are going to have a lot softer handling. You're not going to get anywhere close to this. That's not really a performance version. You know, you have performance versions of like the Audi Q7, the Mercedes GLE 450, and the BMW X5, which kind of compete with this directly. And I've driven the GLE, I've driven the X5, and you know, they're very impressive vehicles. I think, you know, for example, the E-body control that you had in the Mercedes, where that would actually lean into corners, that was the most mind-blowing as far as SUVs in this segment and handling for those. That thing just handled incredibly well with that very sweet, just the way it leaned into corners like you're on a motorcycle. It's just wild. So for mind-blowing handling in this segment, go for a GLE with that suspension, which was a very rare and expensive option, but that is still the king. But outside of that very rare and expensive version of the GLE, I think this handles really, really well. I still think though an X5 has slightly firmer setups to it, you know, so you can have a little bit of a tighter suspension in that. This definitely, again, is focused on comfort, I think, a little more than I personally would like. But again, for the buyer of this vehicle that probably, you know, has it as a daily driver, doesn't, you know, carve up Tail of the Dragon or some intense back rip, doesn't autocross it or track it, you know, it still is very comfortable. By the way, I'm now driving on this road that has some potholes and a bunch of uneven pavement and stuff. And even in Sport Plus mode here, it's totally fine. It's not uncomfortable at all. So you can honestly drive this thing around in Sport Plus mode all the time if you want, or even, you know, the Sport mode, which gives you a little bit of a calmer transmission setup, so you're not sitting at 3,000 RPMs like I am currently. I'll try out some downshifts here. It's pretty quick, but you can still hear there's a torque converter there that's kind of getting in between, you know, the super razor fast shifts. It's not as good as the ZF8 speed or anything like that. But we'll go down this on-ramp here. Still forces me to go into second gear, but here we go. Okay, I was trying to do an auto upshift for me there, but man, this thing hauls. It really does fly. But yeah, the body moves around a little bit. It adds excitement, so I do like that. But for someone who's again used to, you know, an M Sport package or an AMG, you know, version of, you know, a GLE or something like that, you know, this is definitely going to feel, I think, a little bit looser. But man, this thing, I can tell this thing just wants to just fly. This thing is strong. I really like how it does feel like it's always eager and ready to just take off, and that power just feels very strong and meaty. And especially in Sport Plus mode here, again, being in the meat of the power band all the time, it really just makes this thing just feel like, yeah, it's so annoyed that you're going slow and it just wants to go faster and faster. But now I'm out here on the highway in the MDX Type S, and you know, it's a really nice highway cruiser as well. I'm now in the individual mode, so I have the comfort suspension set up while still having the sport transmission and engine tuning and all that. And so, I mean, but in comfort mode, this thing just really glides along, even on this part of this road where it's, you know, very unevenly paved, we're going through construction zones and stuff. It still is pretty quiet in here as well. Nice and smooth, buttery smooth, honestly. It's like silky smooth riding in this thing. Just would be such a great grand tour. But anyway, you know, with the MDX Type S, you also have all the safety equipment as standard here. So you have blind spot monitoring, all those types of things. You have adaptive cruise control with lane keeping assist, and all the usual stuff you'd expect out of a vehicle that's, you know, as expensive as this is, and, you know, competes very well with all the other, you know, vehicles out there. And even a lot of the Germans have a lot of the stuff as an option, and the Type S here it's standard, so that's great. You don't have to pay any extra for any of that safety equipment, but it all works very well. So anyway, that's all of my thoughts here so far on the MDX Type S, but thanks to Acura, I will have this vehicle for an entire week, so I'm going to drive around all over the place, then I'll come back and give you guys my final real-world fuel economy, as well as my thoughts on the pricing, how it compares to its competition, and anything else that I notice here during my week of driving. Alright, so I've been driving the MDX Type S for a week now, and I've really enjoyed it. It's a lot of fun to drive. It's really, really impressive, and I got to play with the handling a little bit more as well, and I'm very impressed with that. Again, it's heavy, it's big, and I still think that there's certain things about the regular MDX, and it just feels lighter, and so I think in some instances, especially tighter scenarios, tighter corners and stuff, where I actually do prefer the handling of the regular MDX because it was already so good, that even though, yes, there's some enhancements here with the Type S, it's just, you know, you still have the extra weight and stuff, that it doesn't feel quite as agile sometimes as a regular MDX, which is, you know, something I wasn't totally expecting. But, you know, just one interesting thing to note there. But one thing I do love is this super handling all-wheel drive system, both here in the Type S and in the regular MDX, is so good. And it even got tail happy on me, though, with the extra power here in the Type S. At one point in the rain, whenever I was stomping on it with the wheel turned a little bit from a stop, which was unexpected, honestly, but really fun as well. And, you know, the rest of the whole experience here in the MDX is also top-notch here. And all MDXs, again, I just love the steering. I kept coming back to being like, man, like, I still love the steering in these things. And Type S here is just as good as the regular MDX, in my opinion, as far as that goes as well. Although, again, it does have some unique tuning, and it felt really, really good here in this. You know, as long as you're not trying to change direction aggressively, you know, again, because of the extra weight, which I really did feel a lot more than I was hoping to. But otherwise, you know, you have this fantastic stereo, which I love listening to all week. It's right up there. It's one of the best stereos I've ever tested, in my opinion. I mean, I haven't done any of the super high-end exotic stuff, but as far as all the mainstream luxury brands go, you know, it's very impressive. I think it's right up there with some of the best systems, you know, for Mercedes and Audi and BMW. Although I will say that, you know, maybe like the Audi RS7, which is, you know, double the price of this thing, you know, I think that might have this beat a little bit. But I mean, this is really, you know, super good. Yeah, the way this thing accelerates from a dig is really impressive, and I really did love, especially driving around in sport mode. That really gives me the response that I want and that I'm kind of expecting out of a Type S personally. Again, having that branding, that badge really, you know, to me means it's got to be, you know, top notch as far as performance goes, and I think in most ways it is. I still every once in a while do get a little bit of lag though, where it's not consistent, which is the thing that throws it off the most. If it was actually consistently laggy, I could learn to live with it a little bit better. But it's like most of the time I'm like, oh, okay, there's not really any lag in the throttle, and then every once in a while it like just, for some reason, takes an extra beat or two before it starts giving me the power that I'm looking for. That primarily happens mostly in normal mode, but it still is something that, again, it's not a consistent experience. I'm not sure what happens. Is just the transmission getting caught off guard for a split second or what, but just one thing that, you know, annoyed me a little bit, but again, a very minor thing I think you could learn to live with. Another thing that you might also be able to learn to live with is this touchpad, which I still think is totally fine whenever you're in Acura's own menu systems, but using CarPlay still is just, it completely throws off the touchpad experience because it doesn't use the same mechanism as it does whenever you're using the regular Acura infotainment system setup. So it means you have to recalibrate your brain every time as far as what you need to do with your finger in order to actually hit the icon you want to hit. It's not great. You know, if we lived in a world with no smartphone integration, I could see this system totally working well for Acura. But, you know, the realities of what people want these days, people just want to have their phone, you know, functionality, and that's it. They don't really care that much about using the actual in-car infotainment stuff very much, at least in my experience from what I've seen. And so, you know, it's not great. Again, you can learn to live with it and learn to, you know, recalibrate your brain every time you're going from one system to the other. But it's just something that's needlessly complicated, and something that all the other competitors, all the Germans, by the way, you know, they were adamant as well about having controller wheels and how they were better than touchscreens, and they all caved as well and went for the touch thing. You know, it's debatable as far as which one works better. You know, Mazda fans are some of the ones that defend the controller wheel the most. And so, you know, it just depends on personal preference, I suppose. But, you know, it just seems like the majority is going with the touchscreen. I wish they would just go with the touchscreen. Bring this screen, you know, a couple inches more forward, and then, you know, it'd be set. Honestly, I'd even live with it in its current position. I'd be more than happy to reach forward and touch this screen if that's what allowed me to use the functionality a little bit easier. But yeah, I mean, it's still just a ton of fun, and you know, the driving experience of the Type S, I think, does outweigh some of those downsides. And I'll get into how this compares to its competitors in a minute. The other one little thing I want to highlight is the massage tunnel, which has more modes than all the competitors, and it felt really good. It was right up there with all the other massages I've tried out for the most part. I haven't done some of the newest stuff like the new S-Class or some of the others, but from the ones I've experienced, this is right up there with the best, and it's a very nice thing to have, although it still feels a little unnatural at times, but overall it is a pretty nice feeling massage. But the last two things I mentioned are the fuel economy and the pricing here of the MDX Type S. So first off, fuel economy. So these are rated at 17 mpg in the city, 21 on the highway, and 19 combined. So in my driving here, I managed to get over about 130 miles of driving I've been doing, which was primarily, you know, around town, suburban, 35 mile per hour, back roads cruising, you know, no stop and go stuff really too much, and you know, not really any highway driving aside from just a little bit you saw a little bit earlier on. But anyway, so over my driving here, 130 miles, 15.8 mpg is what I'm getting here. So, you know, I mean, that's pretty average with, you know, I typically get 1 to 2 mpg less than the city rating in my driving, so I'm only doing 1 mpg less than the city rating, so it could honestly be worse. But, you know, that still is a little low. I mean, the performance and stuff is very impressive. So, I mean, this is basically par for the course, but, you know, it's just something that's going to be a little bit difficult to swallow these days with high gas prices. But, you know, again, you have a big three-row vehicle, tons and tons of luxury, tons and tons of space, and lots of performance. You know, it's just the way it goes. So just keep that in mind that I'm getting about, you know, 16 mpg here. And then the last thing to mention is the pricing, how it compares to its competitors here. So this one is a 2022, but pricing has already come out for the 2023s, and that's what you're going to be seeing here on dealer lots very, very shortly, if not already. And so I'm going to talk about 2023 pricing, because it did go up a little bit already for just the one model year, probably partially because of inflation and stuff. But anyway, these start around $68,500, and then this one, as tested, is about $74,300. And so this one has the advanced package. Now, the heated steering wheel and the kick-to-open tailgate are two things you can add on to a regular Type S, the base model, and it's about $500 for the heated steering wheel and a few $100 for the kick-to-open thing. So thankfully you can get those two things without having to spend an extra $6,000 or whatever. So that's good. But still, like, even like the 360 camera is only on the advanced version here, and that's something, again, we're talking about, you know, high $60,000 vehicles to start. You know, having to nickel and dime people for those few features to, you know, make it go all the way up over 70, you know, I just don't know. I mean, I respect that they're decontenting the Type S for that base version so that people who just care about the performance and want, you know, the big size of the MDX and the performance, you know, they can still get it for a reasonable price, but don't care about having all the toys. But you know, it's just a little bit unfortunate that more of that stuff doesn't come standard. But still, even at that higher price tag, these still are very, very competitively priced. And whenever you try and compare this, if you don't care about performance as much as far as like handling primarily, I mean, obviously straight line performance will be pretty similar, but you know, if you care about handling, this I'm assuming will handle better. I have not actually driven the top version of the GV80. I've done the 2.5T, the smaller engine version with rear wheel drive, so a little bit of a lower GV80 that I've tested. But you know, I'm just assuming that, you know, it's not going to have the super handling all-wheel drive like this does. It has adaptive dampers, and you know, it has a really nice suspension, but it's not going to be set up for actual performance driving like this is. So, you know, just keep that in mind. But otherwise, if you don't care about the performance part, you know, GV80 is a very solid competitor. But the other competitors, you know, whenever you look at the BMWs, the Audis, the Mercedes, they're all going to be, you know, anywhere between about $4,000 to $8,000 more expensive than is comparably equipped. And some of them don't even offer some of the stuff that this has, or they, again, the Germans will nickel and dime you for safety tech, they'll nickel and dime you for, you know, all the other features and stuff. And so it just turns out that, you know, this ends up being, you know, a little bit cheaper than those. And obviously you don't have the prestige of those brands. And I will say that, you know, I think that the Mercedes interior and even the BMW interior is probably a little bit nicer, but I honestly think that in some areas this is actually a little bit nicer, like having all this knee pad.
Not an easy call, since all four of our test V6 family four-doors are solid performers on the road and on the sales charts. Take the 2002 Honda Accord, for instance, the best-selling car for calendar year 2001. And while always one of Honda's most conservative models, it has a handsome, unoffensive look that is viewed as safe by a wide range of buyers. And superb mechanicals. While a 2.3-liter 4 is standard, our EX Tester features a Honda Smooth 3-liter single overhead cam V6 with variable valve timing. It makes 200 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque, and is mated to a ripple-free 4-speed automatic transmission. Accord underpinnings are actually among the most sophisticated of our group. Front double wishbone, rear multi-link suspension. Tiny 14-inch wheels are standard, but most models wear 15 inches in steel or aluminum. Our car has 205/65 tires, all well balanced and engineered. Nissan's all-new 2002 Altima is anything but conservative. This third-generation Nissan midsizer wears the most in-your-face styling in its segment. It's clearly aimed at a youthful buyer looking for something more aggressive than the norm, and it delivers, both with the standard 180 horsepower inline 4 and with this 3.5-liter twin-cam V6 with variable valve timing and a variable induction system. Ratings are 240 horsepower and 246 pound-feet of torque, making it the most powerful of our quartet. And unlike most V6 competitors, there's a choice of transmissions. Either our test car's 4-speed auto or a well-matched 5-speed manual. The new Altima platform runs on a strut front suspension and multi-link rear. 16-inch wheels are standard with our SE wearing 17-inch alloys and fat 215/55 tires. Hardly mom and dad's kid carrier, is it? But this is the long-running 2002 Ford Taurus. A controversial restyling in 1996 cost Taurus its #1 car status. New sheet metal for 2000 cured the critics and made Taurus a high-content, high-value family choice. The flared headlamp front, coupe-like roofline, and bobtail rear actually showed the way for others. If you can fault Taurus styling for anything, it's hitting the mark a few years too late. As to high value, Taurus has the group's only standard V6 and automatic transmission. 2 3-liter V6s are available. The stronger of the two is our SEL test car's twin-cam 24-valve Duratec V6. It makes 200 horsepower and 200 pound-feet of torque, similar to Accord. Taurus uses a straightforward strut suspension both front and rear. Except for the base LX model, all Taurus wheels are 16-inch alloys and 215/60 series tires are standard. Nothing groundbreaking, but a lot of car from the get-go. Giving up its #1 status to Honda last year is the 2002 Toyota Camry. Completely redesigned and sharing its platform with the Lexus ES300, the latest Camry adds a good dose of style and flair to its benchmark, if somewhat boring, family sedan attributes. The look is bigger, bolder, more flowing this year, with an obvious debt to the arrow-like profile of the ES300. The Camry packs a refined V6 in addition to a popular four-cylinder. The 3-liter dual overhead cam V6 in our SE makes 192 horsepower and 209 pound-feet of torque. That's a little more grunt than Taurus and Accord, and the engine is the quietest of our group. The V6 hooks up to a 4-speed automatic that generally shifts smoothly, but tends to stutter a bit if you're wishy-washy with your throttle application. Struts reside up front, upper and lower control arms in the rear. Standard rims are 15-inch with our SE wearing 16s and 215/60 tires. Camry, loved for its dependability and now totally up to date. While alike in goals, put this foursome on the road and you find 4 very different automotive personalities. The Honda Accord is Mr. Reliable, the conservative company man that's solid and predictable. The drivetrain is very well mannered in all kinds of traffic, though we did notice a bit more exhaust noise than we expected under heavy throttle. Fuel economy is 20 city and 28 highway, overall the group's best. Ride quality is very good and handling is totally predictable with moderate understeer and very little body roll. Accord feels even better than it looks. The Nissan Altima is like the rowdy new kid in the office, the one that doesn't even own a tie. Its punchy V6 and solid shifting transmissions have a more visceral feel than the rather cerebral Accord. No surprise that fuel use, 19 city and 26 highway, is a little less than the others. The ride is firmer yet very comfortable, and handling is sharper with quick turn-in and lots of steering feedback. It's as much sports sedan as family hauler. But the Ford Taurus is definitely a family hauler. It has a heavier, more American iron feel than its Asian badge competitors. Less refined to be sure, but solid and sturdy. The sturdy, willing powertrain is rated at 20 city and 27 highway. Handling is not as sharp as the others with heavier understeer, but ride quality and noise control are very good. An old favorite that can still get the job done. As can the Toyota Camry, which is a staunch favorite of those seeking a higher than average level of refinement in their family sedans. The engine is silky smooth and very strong, and except for that off-throttle stutter, the shifts are very crisp. Mileage ratings are the same as Taurus, 20 city and 27 highway. Handling and ride show the Lexus Link. It's luxury car plush, and while not as sharp as the Altima or Accord, feels safe and is predictable. Of course, no car is enjoyable to drive if you're not comfortable, and all these cars are known for offering first-rate accommodations. The Honda Accord has an interior that's modern, straightforward, but a little plain. Passenger space is the smallest overall with a total of 101.7 cubic feet of space. The dash layout is very sensible with plenty of large, well-marked controls. The rear seat has the least headroom of our cars, but trails only Taurus and rear legroom. The trunk is also the smallest with 14. Accord and Toyota Camry both garnered praise for their overall refinement, interior, and reliability. While our Detroit connection, the Ford Taurus, won points for its standard V6, big interior room, and low price. So the SUV may be the new family king, but these cars prove that the midsize four-door sedan still offers buyers a tremendous amount of style, utility, and comfort. Indeed, the family car is alive and well and offers more bang for your buck than ever before. Plus, driving pleasure an SUV can't match.
Recognize the admission of Finland and Sweden to NATO, because we all know that, looking from an historical perspective, NATO members have brought their national issues to the...
Motor Week, television's original automotive magazine. Your host for Motor Week, John Davis.
Well, hello and welcome again to Motor Week. We're glad to have you with us. The front-wheel drive family car has been the American standard Chrysler duo, powerful enough to do it. That depends on where you look for power. If it's in styling, technology, or engines, then the new 2005 Dodge Magnum Sports Tourer and Chrysler 300 sedan definitely deliver. These new big guns of the family car segment mix muscle car and family hauler into a pair of stout rear-drive alternatives to front-drive four-doors and minivans. They sit long and low, their square-shouldered fenders fronted by big 50s-looking Detroit-style grills. The Dodge Magnum boasts a slick body color front end that's right out of a California cruiser shop. while the Chrysler wears a big chrome crosshatch that's more sedate but still boldly stylish. Both ride on a 120-inch wheelbase, among the longest for big cars, yet minimum overhang means their overall lengths are among the shortest, meaning Europe's 5-meter class. Support for their unitized frames comes from 17-inch alloy wheels for V6-powered models or big 18-inch hoops for V8 versions. You have to swing around the back to find the real styling differences between the two, but for both, serious cargo space on a design from parent company Mercedes-Benz. And while both cars debut in rear-drive form, all-wheel drive versions arrive in late fall. We've driven both Magnum and the 300 and are pleased to report that they are tight and well connected to the road. The wallow and roll reputation of other full-size domestic cars is absent, thanks to a carefully tuned short, long-arm front and 5-link independent rear suspension, also borrowed from Mercedes-Benz. With weights in the 2-ton range, neither feels like a lightweight, but they carry their poundage well. There is some front push to be sure, but the steering has good weight and feel. Bringing these weighty machines to a halt are standard all-disc brakes. All but base models are equipped with ABS. The same goes for traction control and electronic stability control. They add foul weather grip and dispense with the front drive or rear drive arguments. The electronics also help keep Hemi horsepower from unlocking the rear tires at every light. And that Hemi does hook up. It feels even bigger and bolder than in Dodge trucks, with the fat power and an aggressive sound of a classic Detroit V8. 0 to 60 is a quick 6.3 seconds. For more sedate drivers, both V6 engines deliver smooth, civilized performance. But oh, that Hemi! Plus, you can enjoy the Hemi and reasonable economy, too. The Hemi includes a multi-displacement system that shuts down 4 of the 8 cylinders at cruise. Chrysler claims fuel economy, 17 city and 25 highway, is 20% better than without cylinder deactivation. What we know is that the Ford Crown Victoria has similar numbers but with 100 less horsepower. Inside, the 300 and Magnum are as full size as you would expect. Passenger volume is 106.6 cubic feet in the 300 and 105.9 cubic feet in the Magnum. Both feature a tall, wide dash with very clean controls. The 300s with alloy color trim and clock-style white-face gauges. The Magnum is more straightforward. Its minimal trim focused on the 4-spoke tilt telescoping steering wheel and alloy gauge rims. Available features range from adjustable pedals to a GPS-based navigation system, to front side and curtain airbags. Seating is firmer and more supportive than in most big American iron, and you sit higher for an almost minivan-like view. Wide, deep buckets in front, with a 60-40 split rear bench that folds flat. And these combinations of style, amenities, and practicality are also priced to move. The 2.7-liter V6 Dodge Magnum SE starts at $22,495. The 3.5-liter V6 Magnum SXT runs $25,995, while a price of $29,995 will put you in a Magnum RT with the 5.7-liter Hemi V8. It's the same tune at Chrysler. The base 300 with the 2.7-liter V6 engine starts at $23,595. The 3.5-liter V6 models runs $27,395 for the Touring and $29,890 for the Limited, while the top-line 300C with the 5.7-liter Hemi V8 costs $32,995. No matter how you slice it, it's a lot of car for the money. The Dodge Magnum and Chrysler 300 are a real change from the front-drive Camrys, Accords, and Tauruses that have been the staple of suburban living for the last 2 decades. With classic Detroit style, world-class performance, and room for real families, we think they will push quite a few front-wheel drive family cars out of America's driveways.
Not worried about a defeat which could overturn Erdogan's
platform of the alliance whenever any particular topic came to the agenda.
Let's to thank one of our sponsors, Farmers Insurance.
Somebody needs saving. Don't worry, citizen. I'm here to save.
Already saved.
Did day?
Switched him to Farmers so he could save an average of $441 on his auto insurance.
Okay. I guess I'll go save the world or whatever.
If you need saving, get a quote from Farmers.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.